You're listening to the Pole Position Podcast from Let's Talk Sport.
Lights out, away we go!
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to unleash the greatest racing spectacle on the planet. It's time to welcome 20 of the best athletes in the world, the finest drivers about to take charge of their machines and commence battle.
Lewis Hamilton wins the US Grand Prix. Stay tuned for the race review in Austin with myself, Jamie Davies, and Dan Middleton on the Pole Position Podcast. So, Hamilton has won in Austin, and yet again, he's treating the track like it's his home. It was his fifth win in 6 in America. Of course, it all started in 2012 when we welcomed the Circuit of the Americas. And that now puts him 66 points ahead of Sebastian Vettel. We have 3 races remaining, which means there is only 75 points left. And as I just mentioned, all Hamilton really has to do now in Mexico is, for example, if he finishes first and Vettel finishes second, like America with the finish on the podium, then it doesn't matter. Hamilton will become the world champion, and that'll be his 4th world championship leveled with Sebastian Vettel. So come next year, it'll certainly be very interesting to see if one of them can go and fight for a 5th world championship. As expecting on the podium, Vettel finished second, but early on, Vettel did overtake Hamilton on the first corner, but then it wasn't long after until Hamilton was able to take over again and then go on to win the race. Raikkonen got 3rd. It was his first podium since the Hungarian Grand Prix, which is the last race before the summer break. So it's been since July since we've seen Raikkonen up there. So overall, that means Mercedes are the Constructors' Champions for the 4th year running. Since 2014, they've done exactly what Red Bull did. They won it from 2010 to 2013 when they had Vettel and Mark Webber. And for at least 3 seasons, Mercedes had Rosberg and Hamilton. And then for the first time with Valtteri Bottas, he's been a good teammate for Hamilton in terms of the championship, and the Constructors has helped Mercedes carry on that consistency. Anyway, Hamilton, let's get his race reaction. This is what he had to say, and he certainly felt like a kid in a candy store. This is what he thought after the race.
That first section, you can really still get through there in similar pace to the car in front without losing too much downforce. There's places where you have to save the tyres, and he wasn't doing that, so I just kind of kept my cool for the first couple of laps, tried to keep the gap, looking after my rear tyres particularly. And then I kind of saw that I got a good exit of turn 1 and was like, this has to be the lap, and it was.
Dan, it was, well, we kind of expected it at the end, didn't we, with Hamilton? He topped all practice sessions, which is all 3 of them, and came out on pole in the qualifying. Had a bit of trouble with Vettel in the first few laps, but after that, he really does treat that track like it's his fortress.
It gives you the impression, Jamie, doesn't it, that he quite enjoyed this weekend. I think he really did enjoy it. I think it was a good drive from him. Of course, Vettel did cause him a few problems, especially as you mentioned very early on, getting a really good start, Vettel. I did catch up on the highlights. I didn't see the race live, but catching up on the highlights, Vettel's start was immaculate. Really good start from him. And Hamilton did very well throughout the race to not only overtake Vettel again, although you could say the pass from Hamilton through Vettel was quite an easy one from Vettel's point of view. There's no sort of defence there, but Hamilton did very well all race. And we look at 3rd place, of course, the controversial Kimi Raikkonen Max Verstappen fiasco that happened. You've got a feel for Max Verstappen. I'm sure we'll come on to that very shortly and get Verstappen's reaction to that, and you'll understand how he felt. But Kimi Raikkonen, again, a good podium for him, a much needed podium for him. It's good to see him back in the top 3, and a 2-3 for Ferrari. It's not a bad afternoon, although, as you mentioned, the Constructors has now gone to Mercedes, and it looks very much as if Lewis Hamilton has now got this championship very much wrapped up.
We go back to 2012. Now, midway through that season, we all heard the big news of Lewis Hamilton joining Mercedes, leaving his boyhood team, McLaren. At the time, everyone was shocked because Mercedes had not proved anything since they came back to the sport in 2010, in which they only won one race, I believe, with Nico Rosberg in 2012 since then. And a lot of people wondered why Hamilton moved. Obviously, we always jump to conclusions and think it's because it's a higher wage, which I guess is fair enough. But when it comes to your pride and trying to prove that you are one of the best drivers Formula One has seen, for him to make that decision, Dan, and to go on and actually dominate the sport for 4 years out of the 5 he's been at Mercedes, what a decision. I mean, that's going to definitely reflect back on his career and think he made one of the best decisions in his career.
It's a remarkable achievement, really, for Hamilton. But not only that, I think the team behind him have been superb throughout the years. The pit crew, the behind the scenes staff, everybody within the Mercedes team have all played a part in Hamilton's success. And look, we look at Bottas as well. A pretty good drive from him at the US Grand Prix as well. But he's been there or thereabouts most of the season, to be fair, as well, as Lewis Hamilton's number 2. Nico Rosberg, of course, a very, very good driver in himself, and that Mercedes car that he was in was also very quick. So they've had consistency for years now, Mercedes, since they started and came back, and it's good to see that Lewis Hamilton took that chance, because it was a chance, it was a gamble, he rolled the dice, but it really did pay off. And of course, as we know, Lewis Hamilton, one of the best drivers F1's ever seen, let's be honest, and that car is incredibly quick, and he's done some superb things, and long may it continue from a British fan point of view.
Exactly. Of course, next season at this moment in time, Lewis Hamilton will be our only driver in the 2018 lineup. But he's the best driver on the circuit at the moment, so we can't complain with that. You don't have to have too many British drivers, not like Germany when they have quite a few on that racetrack at the moment, that's for sure. But they can't even get a winner out of it. But of course, Valtteri Bottas, as you mentioned, he's been a good teammate. Next year, we should probably expect him to fight more. He might be the Nico Rosberg against Hamilton, where he will have a problem with his teammate when they're both battling for race wins, as Bottas only has a 1-year contract. So that is very important indeed. But I must admit, I just want to talk about the podium. Yes, it was mixed reviews after what happened with Raikkonen and Verstappen. We'll talk about that in a bit. But Usain Bolt came out there. He was a guest for the day. Bill Clinton was there handing out the trophies. You couldn't ask for more, could you? A president and the fastest man in the world interviewing you as well. I mean, it was all too cheesy, Jamie. All too cheesy and cringe. Even the walkouts at the start, it was as if you'd won the Premier League, and the match announcers getting these players out one by one and clapping the 30,000 fans that are at the stadium. It's ridiculous. As much as it's trying to make a spectacle, I do think it was just a little bit over the top. Of course, Michael Buffer is there as well, the famous boxing ring announcer. Okay, I absolutely love him to bits, but for an F1 race, is it a little dramatic, a little over the top? Most would argue yes. And unfortunately, I have to side with those people that would argue that. I wasn't a massive fan of it. And I hope that it doesn't happen again. But at the end of the day, I think the US Grand Prix comes around once every calendar, so I suppose they've got to make it the best it can possibly be. But let's not have walkouts like that again, because it was quite awkward when some teams came out in 2s and some teams came out in 1, and then the other driver wasn't exactly the best. But no, like I said, it comes around once every year, so I suppose they've got to make it the best. Yeah, they certainly made it the best hype for it, you could say. But there was a lot of mixed tweets before the race. I had to go on Twitter because it's the best place to go for when people have to argue or rant about a certain matter going on in the world. And there was a lot of negative reviews from the motorsport fans. But that's what happens, I guess. But as he would say, Michael Buffer, the show must go on.
It must.
Yes, very good. But anyway, we'll talk about the actual race again, because Sebastian Vettel, he got runner-up. He gave it a good go, but from when we listened to his interview now, he was certainly not a very happy driver. This is what he had to say after the race.
We didn't have the speed. Then we decided to go 2 stops, which required some passing at the end, which for sure was at least a bit more exciting, but overall was not a great race. Looking, back, the races where we handed out presents didn't help. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just not happy with today. I thought we can really win, but we didn't.
Dan, he asked a lot, didn't he, really, at the end, Sebastian Vettel, when, in any sport, when it's not in your hands to go on and win the Premier League title, the F1 World Championship, you've got to do your best, but when you have to rely on other results, it normally just doesn't happen for you. For Vettel, in his interview, he didn't sound very delighted, obviously. He sounded quite frustrated because he gave it a good go at the start. But we were both saying before we started recording this podcast that he didn't actually show much fight when Hamilton tried to get his place back.
No, it was a little bit lacklustre at sometimes from Vettel. I think, as you mentioned at the start, I think Hamilton's pass, when he got past him, I think Vettel really let Hamilton have too much of the track there. It was almost as if he let him go by, knowing that he was quicker, knowing that he wasn't going to withstand the pressure from Hamilton for a long duration of time. He must be frustrated because he knows that Mercedes were quicker and realistically have been quicker pretty much all season. And it must be a real kick in the kahunas as such, knowing that there's only 75 points available and Hamilton's 66 clear. It's going to be very, very tough for Vettel now, and I think Hamilton's got it wrapped up, and that's probably more the frustrating part, is that Vettel's done so well this season, and he has been very, very good this season, very, very good. It's just been that Hamilton's been that little bit better when the pressure's been on, and of course, a couple of retirements for Vettel haven't helped his cause along the way, and it's all come down to the US Grand Prix. Vettel had to win it, Hamilton had to mess up, and unfortunately, from a Ferrari point of view and from a Sebastian Vettel point of view, that didn't happen, and Lewis was able to capitalise.
Of course, the only way Vettel can keep the championship going after Mexico, which is next weekend, is to win the race and hope that Hamilton finishes 6th or lower. So it's not going to happen, is it?
That's all right though, because your man Sergio Perez is obviously going to come through on his track, his home track, and he's going to win it. Obviously. Yeah.
But sadly, there's not 5 Sergio Perez's to stop that.
No, and if you look at some of our predictions that we'll get at the end of this podcast, if you remember, if the listeners remember a couple of weeks back with Harry, and we picked Harry's for him as a joke, I think you could actually argue now you could get Perez into the top 3, and you could get Ocon into the top 3 and get Force India firing at the Mexican Grand Prix. That'd be nice for you, I guess, Jamie.
It would be a lovely moment, but we'll see what happens next week when we do our preview podcast on the YouTube channel. Don't miss that. We'll talk about Raikkonen now, Vettel's teammate. He got 3rd, but he got 4th at the actual end of the race. That's what really happened. He crossed the finish line in 4th after a few corners beforehand. Verstappen, with an amazing drive, he overtook Bottas a couple of laps before, with just only laps remaining. And then Verstappen, as he's shown his great form at such a young age in that Red Bull car this season, especially the last few races, he overtook Raikkonen, but he overtook him by going off on a corner and then coming back out of it again and overtook Raikkonen. Carried on. There was not enough time for the stewards to say anything before the race finished. But literally the moment Verstappen thought he got 3rd, if you hear his team radio on YouTube or wherever, you'll notice it was a very proud moment for Verstappen. His family were there as well, and for his team principal, Christian Horner. But then, of course, when they all go into the podium room to pick up their caps, quickly have a few minutes to relax before they head out again to show themselves in front of the crowd, Kimi Raikkonen storms from his car, and then he comes up into the podium room and then gives that look at it was a bit of an awkward moment. Verstappen straight away didn't even have to be told. He knew exactly what happened and had to leave. Luckily didn't throw anything in the room.
I would have. I'd have thrown bottles of water around everywhere. I'd have been fuming. Absolutely fuming.
Especially because it's happened before, Dan. In Mexico last year, Verstappen had a moment with Vettel where Vettel got the podium instead, and Vettel came storming in again, and Verstappen, that was the first time he realised he wasn't going to get the podium hat or anything like that. So that's happened to him twice now, and before we even commemorate the first year anniversary of it happening with Mexico next weekend. But no, Raikkonen gets the 3rd position. This is what he had to say after getting the podium, Kimi Raikkonen, and Verstappen getting the 5-second penalty. This was his thoughts.
I think we all know where the track limits are. I mean, if you go over the white lines, in certain places are okay, but if you do it when you're passing people, we all know that it's you're gonna get in issues afterwards.
Yes, only a few words chosen there by Kimi, as always. He's not exactly the man who will sound like he's reading from a book and go on forever like Vettel does in his interviews, but obviously Raikkonen just trying to be professional there. I mean, let's hear what Verstappen said. Let's find out what Christian Horner said as well, because both the driver and the team principal were not happy with the steward's 5-second penalty decision.
Be clear about it. If you say, okay, that's fine, all right, then we will just do what we like. If you say we have to stay within the white lines, we'll stay within the white lines. It's very simple. But we need more consistency. And at the end of the day, let us race. It's 5 centimeters of and everybody was loving it. It was like a great show, I guess. And they're on a good way to kill the sport like this.
Yeah, I've just gone and had a fairly frank discussion with the stewards and expressed my satisfaction with their decision making. But
what did they say?
I think it's an appalling decision, and it's no coincidence the same steward as Mexico last year. And what was agreed after Mexico, when there was that complete palaver with the podium, was that the drivers will be at least investigated. Max hasn't even been given the opportunity to state his case, and I could pick out 20 other incidences from that Grand Prix where the same thing has gone unpunished. So where's the consistency?
Dan, they were obviously angry from what we've heard. It's obviously.
You would be, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah. But how do we overcome this? Because they're arguing with the point that the rules are not consistent. They don't stick to them all the time. It was the same steward that did it to Max Verstappen last year in Mexico as well. What needs to happen?
Well, first of all, that steward's got to be banned from betting, because there's obviously something there that he did it last year and he's done it this year. There's got to be something there. No, but in all seriousness, I think I do feel for Verstappen. It's a horrible way to lose a podium place, isn't it, really? There's not much I'll be honest, I don't think there was much, looking at the replays, there wasn't much that he could have done going at that speed. Obviously Raikkonen's come across a little bit, so he's almost in sort of the centre right of the track, and Verstappen can't continue straight because he's going to go straight into the back of him. He has to go round him, and at the end of the day, I think what they were saying, I think Verstappen and of course Christian Horner were saying, is the quote is here from Verstappen. He said obviously the fans don't understand it, they're loving it and it's just ruining the sport. And what Christian Horner said, which I agree with, that we've seen cars going off the track all weekend, and Valtteri Bottas did it, and nothing was pulled up on it. If you're gonna have things like that, if you're gonna give those sorts of decisions, there's got to be a deterrent there for the drivers not to go off that far off the track. Or that still looks like part of the track. Let's be honest. If they're gonna they need to put some kind of gravel pit there or some kind of wall that stops the drivers from going that way. That's the only way you're going to solve that issue. There's too many grey areas when it comes to this, and of course, as the rules are now, Verstappen was right to have that penalty. If you're going by the letter of the book, I think he's right. But at the end of the day, there has to be some kind of leniency there, or some time taken out before they make the decision to go, right, let's look at the whole situation. Let's look at what happened. Let's look at the specifics of what happened, and then make a decision from there. The decision was done almost instantly, and it wasn't great to see, really. I think it really disheartened Verstappen. As you mentioned, his family were there, and he's been quoted in a tweet, Max Verstappen. I'm sure a graphic will come up on screen right now of what Verstappen said. He said he's disappointed with the inconsistency in decisions regarding track limits this whole weekend. He feels robbed, but it was a superb drive. #USGP. So you see what Verstappen, has had to say on that, and you've got to admit you do feel for him, Jamie.
I do, yes. I must admit, as an F1 fan, I'm just somewhat confused by what you can and can't do in F1. It's not even just the track limits anymore. I mean, we even Jack has said, and I think Harry's been saying it on our podcast in the past, where FIA are just inconsistent and they'll do anything to give a penalty to someone, even when it's not really necessary, and it's not racing.
Jamie, it's what you said before we came onto the podcast. Is if this had happened, so say Verstappen and Raikkonen was somehow fighting for 12th and 13th place, if that had happened, they wouldn't have even blinked an eye.
No.
They wouldn't have mattered. And I can understand it being a heightened problem because of the podium. It's a heightened issue, of course. But at the same time, if it's going to happen lower down the pecking order, that inconsistency needs to go, and there needs to be some consistency brought in to go, right, if it happens anywhere on the track, the rules are the rules, that's it. But we've seen too many times where, as I mentioned earlier, Bottas did it to Verstappen and didn't get caught up in it. It's happened a few times over the years, and not many people have been brought up on it. It just seems to be Verstappen once every year that seems to have this issue, and you got to feel for him. It must be frustrating knowing that you've got a podium and all of a sudden that is wiped away in the blink of an eye by the FIA because of something that happened at a high speed on a racetrack. It's not fair, and that rule needs to be looked at for me.
I do hope one day Christian Horner whenever he does leave the job at Red Bull, I do hope one day he's part of the FIA or Formula One in terms of being in charge of the whole sport, because that man, he always had something to say. He's always got an opinion on what to change. He's always in the meetings as well of what he recommends, and he's even recommending bringing back the old noisy engines of the V8s and the V12s again. Apparently they got a meeting this week in Paris about it all. So I do hope one day we do see Christian Horner not just being a team principal at Red Bull, because I feel like his opinions really matter to the sport, and hopefully we won't have any of this farce in the future where, I mean, I'm just confused myself as a fan, but the moment it flashed up the graphic during the race, 5-second penalty at the end where there was Verstappen celebrating, and someone had to go up to him and probably just tap him on the shoulder and said, yeah, you got fourth.
The guy that went up to him must have got a pay rise, because I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to be in issues going up to somebody that's just got a podium to go, actually, we need you to come out of the green room and we need you to just go and spend time with your team because Raikkonen's actually going to come in now and replace you.
Yes.
You have to feel for Verstappen. It's a horrible situation, and it's something that needs to be looked at in the future.
But he had, again, a great drive, and he's just been fantastic all season. I mean, he's signed a new contract. Let's quickly mention that, because this happened after we did the preview podcast on
Good
YouTube.
timing, of course.
Good timing, yeah. It all happened just afterwards, actually.
They could have waited, couldn't they?
Yeah, they could have done it before we did our podcast, thank you very much. But they're keeping him on till 2020. Do you think that's just to try and stop the other teams from trying to grab him? Because let's be honest, Verstappen's future is very bright. It's just all about the car, surely.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. His future is very bright, and I think Red Bull want to be a part of that, and I think he wants to be a part of Red Bull's future as well. I think that it works both ways. I think Red Bull have got a very, very good car. Fortunately for Ricciardo at the US GP, I think obviously the engine failure wasn't great to see Ricciardo out, but realistically, looking at the season as a whole, I think the Red Bulls have been very consistent. I think they've had some really good drives from both Verstappen and Ricciardo, and I think Verstappen is one of the best drivers on the grid, even for his quite young age, let's be honest. And I think the car suits Verstappen's drive, and I think Max Verstappen suits the Red Bull way of driving. I think he's got that he's got energy, he's got desire to win, and let's be honest, I think he'll be a future world champion. I think only time will tell. And I think if he stays at Red Bull and keeps that car developing, and they keep it up to date and they keep the engine fresh, and they get quicker year in, year out, I think he will be a world champion in a Red Bull car. So I think they're planning for the future more than the short term. I think that's more than likely, instead of other teams trying to poach Verstappen. I think it's very much, let's build the team around Verstappen and go from there.
I can agree with you on that, Dan, of him being a future world champion, the way he's going. Anyway, let's go through the leaderboard then. So obviously Hamilton winning another race this season. I think it's his sixth. I think it's more than that. I might be wrong, to be honest, from the top of my head.
Do your research, Jamie.
Do my research, God. Sebastian Vettel with second. He, of course, has now got the lap record in COTA, which is 1 minute 37 seconds, 0.7. Kimi Raikkonen third, Max Verstappen fourth, Valtteri Bottas fifth. But this is a bit of a record now. Esteban Ocon for Force India, getting a good sixth position there after starting fifth, though. He had to go down a place, but it doesn't really matter right now. He's still got the points for Force India. He adds 8 points for the Force India team, keeping that team very strong in the mid-table. but also he has broken the most consecutive race finishes from his debut, and he now has 26, which has beaten Max Chilton. Yes, that old Mercer driver who had 25. So he's beaten him. But in all fairness, Dan, I feel Esteban Ocon's record's a bit more noticed because Max Chilton was always at the back of the grid, just moving out the way for the cars that were overlapping him.
Yeah, that's the thing. Force India have been there or thereabouts this year, and have almost been the talk of the town, bar Lewis Hamilton and Vettel's fight for the championship. I think Ocon and Perez have been a very, very good team, and we even saw the feisty side of Perez to Ocon in the USGP when Perez was on the team radio going, "He's too slow. Let me get past him. He's too slow." But that sort of rivalry has always been there between the two, but it's almost a friendly rivalry. They want to get Force India higher up and onto podiums race after race, and I think that's brilliant. And I think Ocon's been pretty good this season as well as Perez, so they've complemented each other really well this year.
They certainly have. I like your point now of them racing each other just to get the team higher up. Carlos Sainz, it's his debut for Renault, and a good finish really as well, going up a place from his qualifying, which was 8th. He finished his 7th, and that means that's 6 points already in his Renault career, and really he's done alright. He's beaten Nico Hulkenberg as he retired early on, so a good start for him, Dan.
Yeah, very, very good start for him, and it's good to see really, because obviously with what happened, he'll be obviously signing with the French team on loan from Red Bull in 2018 for the final 4 races on loan now. And it's good to see him get up there really, because he is a good driver. I think you're a fan of him, Jamie, as well, and I think obviously Jack and Harry do like him as well. So I think he's been really good. But you've got to look at the other side of it. You've got to look at Daniel Kvyat as well, who obviously was dropped in favour of Gasly as well. So that team is there of looking at Brendan Hartley as well, making his Formula 1 debut. I mean, that's pretty impressive for him, and especially when he walked out from Michael Buffer's sort of announcement, you could call it, at the start. It was good to see Hartley come out. But I think Carlos Sainz has made a pretty good decision in his career. Actually, I think it takes him to another level, and I think maybe Toro Rosso could get that a little bit better.
We'll move on. Sergio Perez for Force India gets 8th. He started 10th, so he'll take that. But Perez, as we mentioned, the team radio, he did ask the Force India team for the second race in a row if he can attack Ocon when Ocon was 7th at the time. Ocon was in front of him at the time with Sainz behind him. What happened? Ocon looked like he was slowing up, and Carlos Sainz overtook Sergio. So not the greatest day for the Mexican when he's got the home Grand Prix coming up next door this weekend. This is what Perez had said in the team radio when he asked to attack Esteban Ocon.
Sainz is coming. I have a lot more pace than this. Can you tell Esteban to let me by and I'll give him back the position in the end?
So yet again, Perez and that Ocon rivalry, they're both going to be there next year for Force India, and they'll probably continue. Felipe Massa, 9th, good 2 points there in a race where he's trying to keep the seat for next year, with Robert Kubica and Paul di Resta somewhere about trying to get the job off him. And Daniel Kvyat, the man who has, of course, not been about, has actually beaten his new teammate, if he is to stay, Brendan Hartley. He gets the last point of the places in 10th with just the 1 point. Not bad when he started 11th as well, so he actually progressed in the race. So not bad for him, Dan. But I mean, what's going to happen with Toro Rosso? What's going to happen? Is he going to stay or?
I don't know. Kvyat's future is very much the talking point at the minute as well, isn't it? Especially now Brendan Hartley's come in to be his teammate for at least the end of the season. It's interesting because I don't rate Kvyat as a driver. I think he's very bang average, and apologies if you can hear my phone in the background. Someone's trying to get hold of me. It might actually be Daniel Kvyat
It could be Daniel.
It could be Daniel Kvyat trying to get hold of me, so apologies, Daniel. But
I reckon he's asking for a pole position podcast contract.
it might well be, so I'll have to get back to him in a minute. But if you can't hear the phone, then my phone has just gone off. But we look at Daniel Kvyat. I get a very good 10th. I think it was good to see him, and a pretty good lap time as well, of a 1:49.71. I think is a pretty good lap time for him. But we look at his teammate Brendan Hartley, who beat Romain Grosjean. I think that's a pretty tough ask, because Grosjean's not a bad driver in himself, and I think Haas have been pretty consistent in sort of the 9th to 15th sort of area of the standings each race. So a good drive from his teammate. But I don't know about. I mean, I want to get your thoughts on it, Jamie. Where do you see Daniel Kvyat come next season? Do you think obviously he'll be staying at Toro Rosso, or do you think someone else is going to take his place?
I feel right now for Toro Rosso that they're focusing on who the drivers are going to be just for the next 3 races for the end of the season. And I think after that, they'll have to have a board meeting and look at their options and go, right, we need 2 drivers that we're going to stick to for 2018, and then obviously have a reserve driver afterwards. But at this moment in time, I think that's what they've got to focus on. I don't know about Kvyat's future. He did a good drive yesterday, I thought. At least he didn't crash, because I think that would have made sure he wouldn't come back to F1. But he's done okay. I think he'll be proud of that. But it's all. The question is, has he done enough? We'll move on. Lance Stroll in 11th for Williams. Stoffel Van Dorn in 12th. Brendan Hartley, as we just mentioned, his first race in F1, and has done okay. He's done very well after he started 19th as well. So he went up 6 places in the race. And let's not forget, he did have a penalty against him even before the Grand Prix weekend, which was very harsh for the fact that he had nothing to do with it in the races beforehand. But this is what the New Zealander had to say on his debut race and his future.
Up until this moment, I haven't been asking the questions, and it was the same when they called me up to do a simulator test. I didn't want to know, I just did the job, and that's how I've taken this weekend, and I've actually been really relaxed, and I'm happy that I did it that way. And I guess now there might be some conversations, but I really don't know. You have to ask them.
Dan, I mean, Brendan Hartley has done exactly what they've asked. I feel he's done the best he can with that car. We know Toro Rosso would be delighted just to get top 10 finishes with the pace this weekend. Would you at least give him a seat for the next 3 races and just see how he gets on?
Why not? He's got a 13th in this race, albeit I know 4 people retired, but he still finished ahead of the Magnussen, Ericsson and Grosjean. And he even was quoted in saying, this opportunity came as a surprise to him, but his childhood dream and ambition was to reach F1. So he wants to do this, as a passion for it. And I think the fact that Toro Rosso have given him an opportunity, albeit near the end of the season, I think it's very much go out there, do what you can with the car, and see where we end up. Because if you prove yourself that, okay, you're going to get in and around 10th to 15th every race or whatever it may be, there's consistency there to build upon, why not give him a shot? Why not? But what have you got to lose? Because Toro Rosso aren't exactly going to challenge for the Constructors or the World Championship, are they? They're almost a feeder team. So why not just get him in there and give him races to get experience, to better himself as a driver? He knows he's going to be competing with the best of the best. Get him in there, get him in amongst it, and I think it'd be good to see him there next season. I think actually it is another potentially good driver onto the grid.
We wish him the best of luck. Will he be in Mexico? Well, we'll find out. Well, probably in the next day or so, because they haven't got long to decide before they have to head to Mexico City. Romain Grosjean in 14th for Haas, Marcus Ericsson with 15th, and Kevin Magnussen finishing last after the retirements of Fernando Alonso with yet again his 11th retirement of the season.
Painful, that is. Painful.
Absolutely painful. I mean, hopefully Alonso next year will not have to have that many retirements when there's a Renault engine. Of course, this is after he has just signed a new contract with the team. Daniel Ricciardo having to go off because of a bad engine at the end. He was very disappointed with the form he's been on as well. He retired after 14 laps. And then the 2 Germans of Pascal Wehrlein and Nico Hülkenberg retiring on the 5th and 3rd lap. Now, before we talk about the predictions of what we said in the preview podcast, let's quickly go through the driver of the day. Now, we put out a poll on our Twitter account, which you can follow us at Let's Talk Sport 12, all lowercase, and the figure of 1 and 2 for 12. And we asked for your driver of the day. And that was, of course, Verstappen, who won with 80%. And the other options were Hamilton and Sainz, and the other one being other, in which you could comment the name underneath. So Verstappen with 80%. 80th, what am I saying? Hamilton 13%, Sainz 4%, and other got 2%. Dan, would you have gone for Max Verstappen?
I would have. Do you know what? I went onto it and I accidentally clicked on Hamilton because I just thought, oh, Hamilton, yeah, he won, great. And then I realised that what I do every week is not pick the winner unless it really is an incredible drive. I would have gone with Verstappen 100%, and I feel it as if he was hard done by without getting his podium place, which you've already mentioned. So I would have gone Verstappen if my brain had been switched on this morning, which it wasn't, and I just clicked on Hamilton because it was a vote. But I would have definitely gone with Verstappen.
Brains are never switched on Monday morning. Anyway, we now move on to the Pole Position Podcast Predictions Championship.
This is where it gets interesting.
This is where it gets very interesting. This is when we find out if the table places have changed. Well, they haven't. They simply, for that. Everyone, for the first time on the championship of our predictions, all four of us have got points. Harry Wright, Harry Wright is top with 52 points because he went for Hamilton to win. Just to point out, everyone said Hamilton to win, so that's why we were going to get points. Vettel second and Ricciardo third. He just got Ricciardo wrong, so that's 18 points for him. Dan, you're still second, but you're still only 10 points behind just beforehand.
Here's one, right? If the viewers and listeners are watching this or listening to this podcast, this is going to be interesting. Listen to my top three. Go on, Jamie.
Here we go. Yep. Hamilton first, Vettel second, Verstappen third.
Oh, shit.
Which for 5 seconds, you were right.
I almost got the clean sweep.
And you could have had 25 points, which is the maximum you get if you get all three right. And
That's the reason why I was more aggrieved of the decision. Nothing to do with the grey areas.
You could have been 3 points behind Harry instead of 10, so that's 18 points for you. I'm third still, but that means I am now 8 points behind you, Dan, with 34 after this is what really annoys me. I said Hamilton and Vettel for first and second, and then I said Bottas third, but before we did the preview, I nearly put Raikkonen. Oh, who's going to get that maximum points? And now we move on to Jack. He got points as well, but he got the lowest out of us all, because me, Dan and Harry got 18. Jack got 10. So that means Jack is now on 28 points. So he loses. He goes behind me again. He's on 28 after he went for Hamilton, which is the only one he got right. Ricciardo second and Bottas third. So there's 3 races to go, and it looks like it's still a good battle between Harry and Dan at least. Well, I'm Raikkonen just getting third at the moment all the time. Anyway, that is our championship. Mexico next, of course, that will be our next podcast. The preview podcast will be out at some point this Friday. Remember, it's another evening race for us UK viewers. 7 o'clock on Sunday instead of the 8 o'clock we had for US. I'd like to thank Dan Middleton for being on the show. Of course, no Jack and Harry this week. Hopefully they'll be back next week for Mexico. But yes, we will be back in just a few days. Throughout the week we've got the interview with Karen Chandok, the interview with myself and the ex-F1 driver, and we've also, of course, asked fan questions as well, which you'll see in a separate video going up on our YouTube channel this week. So make sure you like, share and subscribe to Let's Talk Sport and keep us going, keep the podcast going, not just for this week but for the future of the sport of F1 as well. So see you next time.